Clint had always been a cynic. He thought most acts of kindness were simply for show, especially when it came to celebrities. To him, they were just people trying to build a better image, nothing more. So, when he overheard a group of colleagues talking excitedly about Clint Eastwood making a surprise appearance at a local charity event, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. "He's just doing it for the cameras," Clint muttered under his breath, dismissing the idea that someone like Clint Eastwood could genuinely care. Little did he know that night would challenge his entire view on kindness. Clint worked as a mid-level executive at a small finance company. For years, he'd been consumed with climbing the corporate ladder, thinking that promotions and titles would fill the emptiness he felt inside. But the more success he achieved, the more isolated and disconnected he became. His relationships with colleagues felt shallow, and he often found himself alone with his thoughts after work. He had little faith in anything that wasn't tied to work or his own ambitions, dismissing anything that didn't align with his goals. So when he heard about the charity event, he wasn't interested. However, the mention of Clint Eastwood, one of the most admired actors in the world, was enough to grab his attention. He figured if he went, he could at least say he'd seen him in person, but he wasn't expecting anything special. Arriving at the event, Clint was immediately struck by the buzz in the air. People were excited, chatting and snapping photos with one another. But Clint stood at the back of the room, arms crossed and unimpressed. He was skeptical of the whole affair. He didn't believe in celebrity charity events, especially not when it seemed like everyone was there to rub shoulders with someone famous. Then, out of nowhere, the crowd shifted, and there he was, Clint Eastwood. To Clint's surprise, Clint wasn't surrounded by a horde of bodyguards or agents. He was just a regular guy, casually walking through the crowd, greeting people with a genuine smile. He shook hands with fans, took time to talk to the volunteers, and interacted with everyone as though he were just another person at the event. The warmth in his demeanor caught Clint off guard. This wasn't the self-serving celebrity he had expected to see. Later that evening, Clint was standing at the bar, nursing a drink. The crowd around him buzzed with excitement as Clint moved through the room, talking to different groups. It wasn't long before Clint found himself standing right beside Clint, casually ordering a drink from the bartender. Clint froze for a second. There he was, Clint Eastwood, standing beside him as if they were two ordinary people, as if nothing set them apart. Clint glanced over at Clint, a quiet acknowledgment in his eyes. "Quite a night, isn't it?" Clint said with a small grin. Clint, feeling somewhat awkward, gave a brief nod. "Yeah, I guess it's all for a good cause." He paused before adding, "I don't really buy into the whole celebrity charity thing, though. Seems like everyone's just out here for publicity." Clint didn't react with defensiveness or indignation, which Clint expected. Instead, he chuckled softly, leaning slightly closer. "I get it. A lot of people think that way. But I've learned that kindness isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about simply showing up for others in the smallest ways." Clint blinked in surprise. This wasn't the answer he had anticipated. Clint wasn't giving a rehearsed response or trying to convince Clint of anything. He was just speaking truth in a calm and steady tone that seemed to cut right through the cynicism Clint had been clinging to. The conversation with Clint lingered in Clint's mind long after he left the event. At first, he tried to push it aside, but the more he thought about it, the more it gnawed at him. Clint had said that kindness wasn't about grand gestures, but about simple moments of connection. That idea kept turning over in Clint's mind, and for the first time in a long while, he questioned his approach to life. Why had he shut himself off from kindness? Why had he stopped valuing human connection, thinking it was just another transaction? What if there was more to life than just climbing the corporate ladder? What if the real fulfillment lay in moments of genuine interaction and empathy? Over the next few weeks, Clint began to notice things he had previously ignored. A colleague, Emma, was having a tough time, struggling with balancing work and personal issues. Normally, Clint would have just moved past her, too focused on his own agenda to care. But now he saw her differently. He approached her one afternoon and, for the first time in a long while, asked if she was okay. She broke down in tears, explaining everything that had been weighing on her, from family struggles to stress at work. Clint, who had always been the one to bottle up emotions, listened carefully, offering her a safe space to talk. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it made a huge difference to Emma. She thanked him for just being there, for seeing her. Clint realized something in that moment. Kindness was about being present. It wasn't about making a show of things or seeking attention. It was about truly connecting with people and helping them feel seen and heard. As weeks turned into months, Clint's perspective continued to shift. He began to notice the ripple effect of his actions. By showing kindness to those around him, whether it was listening to a colleague or helping someone with a project, he was building stronger relationships at work and in his personal life. People were starting to see him as someone who cared, not just someone who was focused on his career. Clint wasn't perfect, but he had come to understand that kindness wasn't something to be skeptical of. It was a force that could change lives, and it had started to change his. One evening, while reflecting on how much he had changed, Clint realized that Clint Eastwood's words had set off a chain reaction in his life. The small, quiet act of kindness Clint had shown him, just being present and genuine, had transformed his outlook on the world. And as Clint looked around at the people in his life, he realized that kindness wasn't just about what he could do for others. It was about the connections he could create and the lives he could touch, no matter how small the gesture. What started as skepticism had blossomed into a belief in the power of kindness, a belief that Clint would carry with him for the rest of his life.